the one we did in Minnesota where I was running back and forth, they didn't snake the cars.
Oh.
So you would start on one end, go to the other, and then you had to get down to the other end. So they ended up having a side-by-side parked at the end, and they would zip me back to the other side. So we didn't have to keep it slowly. They'd drive me back.
Hello, and welcome to the Daktronics Experience Podcast. I'm Justin Oxner, here with Matt Anderson. Today, we're joined by Nick Schmeichel, president and owner of Sideline Productions. He's going to talk to us about his live events business, how things have fared in the wake of COVID, and what he's been doing from high school events to rodeos and fairs. And we're here today with Nick Schmeichel. Nick, how you doing?
Good, man.
Good. Matt, you doing all right over there?
I'm doing good, Justin. Thank you.
Early morning recording. You got coffee, you got donuts. This is going to be a good one, I think,
Yeah,
right?
I'm feeling good about it.
So, Nick, it's been a while since we talked to you. Can you give us a quick overview of what you do again here for Sideline Productions?
We are a live event video production company. So we use the Daktronics displays of various sizes to put on live events, concerts, sports, corporate.
And more recently...
Nothing.
I was going to say that we all know that the live events industry has been, to say different than, or a little different is probably an understatement, but
yeah,
I mean, maybe just a little bit kind of high level. How has everything that's happened over the last 5 months, 6 months kind of affected you and your business?
Yeah, well, in March, when this kind of all started, we pretty much knew we'd be the first ones done and the last ones back to work. And I think it's a pretty accurate statement. You know, we were at 2 events. We were in Michigan and in West Virginia getting ready for different conference tournaments for basketball. And literally the day of that they were going to start playing, gone. Pack your stuff up and head home. We're canceling the tournament. So we had to pack everything up and head back to South Dakota. And it's a shock. It was a shock. You know, we weren't really expecting it. When you hear stuff like pandemic, you're like, it's the 21st century. Like, what we're advanced medicine, you know, like what's going on here?
Right.
And it was a shock. You know, I talked to a lot of the guys that I was out there with, a lot of camera people, like people that work, you know, not paycheck to paycheck, but event to event. Mm-hmm. They don't have like a full-time job. That's their job. You know, they were concerned. They were already in March. Like, what's this going to do for baseball? Well, they're worried about Major League Baseball and all these things. And I mean, I think one thing that this has actually opened up, and I've seen it more across nationwide, is people realize how big the event industry actually is. Mm-hmm. And you know, it's not just musicians and the sports talent and, you know, the things like that. It's all the people that put it on, you know, people like us, audio, video people, but also the people serving beer and food in the stadiums.
Yep.
Like there's a long list of how this, of what goes down, and it's a big industry. So it was a definite shock, but you know, we're trying to get through it.
Yeah, and I didn't think of that at the beginning where you were actually out on the road and you were set up for a tournament ready to go. When you got the word and you had to pack up and go home, did you think it was going to be like, oh, this is going to be a 2-3 week thing? You said some people were worried about baseball already. Did you have the thought of further down the road?
You know, you never know. Like, this is something brand new. I knew it was going to be longer than 2 weeks.
Okay.
You know, when you have something like the NCAA tournament, cancel.
They don't do that on a whim.
That's not a, oh, we're just going to cancel it this year. That's a hard, long decision. And I didn't see it going as long as this, but we're just going to keep on going. And
because I was going to say, it's not to
come out the other side.
Not to keep talking about that day, because I'm sure it was it's a dark memory.
Not a happy memory.
But right, you packed up, you came home then, but you have events usually planned out for the rest of the year, right? Was it everyone kind of slowly let you know, like, hey, we're going to wait and see what happens? Or was it everyone just called you like the next day and we're like, we're all done? Like how?
Yeah. So
again, tell me to move on if you don't.
I mean, I told you last time that we did this, you know, my first event ever, a snowmobile flew through the air and crashed into my $500,000 video display. So that, I mean,
that
you
story.
that was a pretty dark day. I was nervous about insurance and all that stuff. I mean, this is something you don't really, you know, when you put together a business model, you don't really plan for a pandemic.
Right.
So I didn't really have this in my thing. So processing it wasn't, you know, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. But in terms of, you know, summertime, we would get to about, March was canceled when that all happened.
Yep.
And we figured if April events were too. We don't have a ton in April. It's just kind of a weird shift month between our April and October are our shifting months where we bring things back, fix them in the shop, and get them ready for winter and summer seasons. But then we kind of got to the end of April, beginning of May. We found out we lost one of our huge horse shows in Pennsylvania. And then, as we go along, things were either canceling or they're like, well, we're going to maybe postpone it to August. And you're kind of in this weird limbo. I mean, we had events that were 3 days before the event and said, look, we need to know if you're going to have it or not. If we go on the road, we want to get paid something. Even if you don't have it, we got to get paid for our fuel because we're not going to have an expense if you're going to go up there and tear down and come back home. I mean, we've experienced that enough already this year. We can't take any more. So, I would say some events were immediate into cancel, but some were on the postponement thing.
Okay.
And we did have a couple events postponed, but most of them canceled and said, we're preparing for a better 2021.
Right.
Sounds good.
And that's what we're hoping for, a better 2021.
So if a lot of them were postponed, a lot of them were canceled too.
Yeah.
What was your first event back? You've had a couple of events since then.
Yeah.
What were some of the first ones?
So one of the unique things that came out of this with the social distancing and stuff was some of our first events back were actually in May.
Okay.
High school graduations came along, and it was really nice to see how a community would pull together, because they don't typically do this. They have it in their auditorium, that their school's already built and long.
Yeah.
So, and they can't do that. So a lot of them they were having it outside. They'd bring in a stage and a video screen. The ones we were at anyway, and audio. And then they would either we did a couple in football stadiums where the kids were spread out on the track, like 10 feet apart.
Okay.
Just had chairs staggered.
Yeah, chairs staggered. And then the family had boxes on the football field that were painted to stay in.
Oh.
And they made it wide enough so the students could get up and still give their mom a rose. So they made like rows for them to walk through, and they could give their mom flowers or whatever.
Nice.
Give their parents hugs after they graduated. Some did a stage walk where one student would come up at a time, walk across the stage, get their diploma, shake the hand of the superintendent, but then the superintendent immediately
disinfected
his hands. So the next student could do that. And some of them did like just a fist bump and, different things like that. And then the ones that we did in Minnesota were drive-in style, because the way that, state to state, everybody's different.
Right.
And one of the challenges we had there was trying to figure out they wanted to have a camera go from car to car.
Oh, wow.
We don't typically like to use wireless stuff in live events. It can be very unreliable.
There's a lot of interference that you can run into.
Yeah. So we ended up using a tear deck, and it worked okay for it. I mean, it worked. It just makes us nervous. A cable's way better. But when you have 50 cars spread out over a 10-acre pasture.
Yeah.
What we did, we had our camera, fly pack, wireless receiver at the truck, and then I just ran from car to car while our director switched.
So it was just each student was in a car, just one person each car, and did they do like a drive-through as a walk-up?
No. So Brookings did a drive-up where the student could drive up. The family would drive up in their car. Student would get out, walk across the stage, get their diploma, get back in their car, and drive back around.
Oh, okay.
But in Minnesota, nobody got out of the cars. They stayed in the cars, and that's why we ran.
They throw the diploma at them at the
They just
window?
put it under the wiper?
They gave the diplomas out ahead of time to the parents. The parents already had the diplomas signed if they graduated.
So it's more about like reading out the name probably then?
Yeah, so the announcer at the stage would read out, and then they used FM transmitters. The audio company used FM transmitters, so you could tune in your car.
Like a drive-in movie?
Yeah, like a drive-in movie. And we just ran through, and they would talk about the student and their awards and where they're going, and then they're like, and to the next student. And I would run to the next car and like get it done.
So they just stayed in their car the entire time?
They did not get out of the car. They were there. Each student was allowed 2 vehicles for their family, and so grandparents and grandmas and grandpas were in one, and their immediate family were in another, typically.
Okay.
That's got to be tough to line up. Like I even thinking like about lining up. Just normally, if you're going to get a line of students in a row to get their names read, the same order, like lining up that many cars in a row. Like
so what was funny too, and one of them we did the one we did in Minnesota, where I was running back and forth. They didn't snake the cars. Oh. So you would start on one end, go to the other, and then you had to get down to the other end. So they ended up having a side-by-side parked at the end, and they would zip me back to the other side. So we didn't have to keep it slowly. They drive me back.
Nice.
And I said, this would have been a lot easier if you guys just snake the cars. Like, yeah, we didn't think about that. And
it's our first time doing it this way.
I can't make it. It was a third of a mile. I said, I can't make it from one end of the cars to the other row in like 30 seconds. It's just not going to happen. So
you're gonna need to start telling some dad jokes or something to kill time on stage.
Right? Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Man.
But those were some of the first ones back. Mm-hmm. But I don't say that as back because they're not typical events. Like they came about because of COVID. But yeah,
but not something you're gonna regularly.
No. We won't have these again unless it's still going on in May again, and then we'd probably have them. But
so sticking with the high school graduation events, my niece did graduate, and she had the similar thing where she was actually out on the football field, and the parents were lined up on the track, and they came up and walked through on the track and came back and did that thing. But I was able to watch it because they streamed it online through YouTube or something like that. Did you help with the streaming at all from the video that you were shooting of the people in the cars, or was that just a one school by school basis type of thing?
Depends on the school.
Okay.
Brookings, we had streaming there because they had internet. It was at the school.
Gotcha.
Parker's Prairie, Minnesota was in the middle of like a field. So no, not good enough internet there, but we recorded everything. So everything was recorded so the students could get a video of
nice.
So if it wasn't streamed, it definitely was recorded.
Okay.
So.
So on the displays during this, was it just the live video that you were shooting? Did you do like any name overlays or anything? Or
one of the big things that they wanted the screen for some of them didn't do live video. They wanted it for the senior slideshows.
Okay.
That's a big thing. Everybody does those senior slideshows, and they wanted to give that to the students.
I didn't think about that. Yeah.
So a lot of them, if we didn't, if they wanted live video, we just throw a robotic camera out front just to give a shot that we could go to. Or we just said that's kind of a minimum package. You're going to want to have something out there to get the superintendent on the video screen and stuff.
Yep.
So it's not just your congrats graduates of 2020 senior slideshow and then congrats graduates of 2020. You have something else to produce on there.
Yep.
Right.
But yeah, it was really different. It was a different live event experience, I guess. I didn't think I'd ever be doing drive-in movies. So
I was going to say, what it was. The ideas for these, is it, did you think of it and approach the high schools with it? Or is it something like they just like people around and you just started brainstorming ideas and it came up?
Yeah.
Like, how did it start?
Some of them, that's immediately when you own video screens that need to be paid off. The first thing was drive-in movie theaters. Like, how do we get this?
Yeah.
And I thought that would come back more this year. I thought drive-in movies would really be a big thing, and they just haven't caught on like I thought they would. I mean, I know there are people doing it, but just not like I thought every week you'd drive in movie theater, you know, and
they were even doing drive-in concerts at some of the movie theaters. I think there was a Garth Brooks concert that was live streamed for drive-in movie theaters, and you'd have to buy your ticket. And go in.
Bert Kreischer did a comedy, like 5 or 8 comedy shows where they did drive-in movie theaters too. Yeah. So, there was a little mix of both. Like we knew some high schools would be interested in it. We tried to focus on the bigger ones because, a town of like 300 people, they typically don't have the funds to bring in that type of production.
Yep.
And then we found out that they actually do, because there's a lot of good like community people that wanted to give that to students. Like Parker's Prairie, I think is 800 or 900 people. I can't remember for sure, but it's a small town in Minnesota. Right. But they had a lot of sponsors that are like, we want to do this for the kids.
That's awesome.
And that's how they did it. Right. And they didn't want to be, you know, I said, so are we putting the sponsors on the screen? They said,
got a logo.
The sponsors didn't want any of that. They just wanted to help do it for the kids. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was kind of a mix of both of calling out, but we got some calls from other clients. You know, we do rodeo up in Parker's Prairie. Okay. That's how we got that.
Okay.
Brookings knows us through one way or the other, either Daktronics or they just know us. And we did Sioux Falls Christian too was one high school that we did, and a few other area ones.
Nice. So, and then even talking about, I'm switch over, Justin, but we're talking about already the Garth Brooks things or different concerts and events. We were talking here before we started recording, even that you helped out at the Sioux Empire Fair for some concerts and different things going on there. Could you give us an overview of kind of, it's two-parted, like what did you do there, what did you provide, and then how is it different from ones that you've done in the past?
Yeah, so it's like when you say our first event back this year, it was Deadwood Rodeo, Days of 76 Rodeo, which is going to win Large Rodeo of the Year this year. We finally got to be a part of it. They're going to win it because there's no other large rodeos going on. And I mean, what's funny about that is they have to compete against like Reno and Cheyenne. I mean, these are massive rodeos. Yep. Deadwood's a smaller town. Mm-hmm. They can't bring in the type of stuff that they have. And they've always been up there competing with those guys. So it's not, you know, it's kind of exciting and it's a big thing for them. But with the Sioux Empire Fair, we'd heard from the very beginning that Scott said, we're not canceling, we're not postponing. We're going to see how we're going to ride this out through the summer. And one of their big shows, Old Dominion, that whole tour was moved to 2021. So that was a show that they didn't have, but the rest of the shows they did. And it was very odd working a concert the way they set it up, but what they did was good. And there was a lot of news stuff that went out there, but they disinfected, sprayed down all the bleachers. Okay. And in the pit area, they had X's or squares, some with X's, some with not, to socially distance people. Oh, okay. They had stations set up for hand washing and Purell, hand sanitizer. Yep. They did a really, really good job of trying to put on a show for people, because a lot of people are just pent up and exhausted of this. I mean, this has been 5-6 months of just constantly hearing about it in the news, and it just, people are exhausted and want to go out and do something. And if you can do it safe, and every band that came there put it on. I mean, they put on a show. Yeah, they've been pent up same amount of time. They haven't played a show, and they, I mean, it didn't matter if you liked the music or not. Those bands put on a show. Mm-hmm. Nice. And it was good to see. I mean, there's a lot of pent up. There's a lot of pent up entertainment there that you could tell that they put on a good show. And if you can do stuff like that safely, I feel like open air is obviously a little more safe than indoors. Yeah. And they just did a really good job of doing it safely, socially distancing everybody, and every band was really appreciative of how it went.
So when you went to set up there, did you have different guidelines that you had to follow, like where you had to enter, times you had to set up, or anything like that? Not really, because we kind of set up on our own there anyway. Okay. I don't know what the stage and audio crew did, but we've been there so long that we have cables pre-run and everything, and we don't typically... You don't get a lot of visitors? When we're when we're there, we're not on our own, but we're not around a lot of people. You know, when you're backstage, there's typically only 15, 20 people back there at any time that are working, stagehands and crew. Yep. Right. And then like the way they spaced out, they did space the pit further back from the front of the stage. Okay. So that helped too with us running camera down in front. Our camera guys were not anywhere close to either the crowd or the band. Okay. We did wear masks when we were near, like during the shows, we wore masks. But for me to ask guys in 95-degree heat when they're by themselves to wear a mask outside, that's a little hard. For 8-9 hours when you're getting ready for a show. But yeah, it was definitely different. But I would say, you know, when you look at it, it was probably the best way it could be pulled off. To still have it, right? To like even having it change and having to have all these guidelines still better than not having it at all. Right? Yeah, yep. And I mean, the state fair in South Dakota here, they cancel all their concerts. Mm-hmm.
I mean, they lost an artist that they booked had died this year, Charlie Daniels. So, I mean, that makes it hard when nobody's touring right now.
Yeah.
Bands aren't out. I mean, you could look at the Sturgis lineup this year and it's not anywhere what it normally is just because there aren't a lot of bands touring, for safety and different things like that. And it just kind of depends. South Dakota's a little bit of an anomaly. Our governor hasn't shut anything down.
Yep. So
there are events that are happening here that wouldn't happen in Minnesota at all. Or, New York or California, Oregon. I talked to a friend of mine in Oregon who does video stuff. He lost everything in March. He didn't have a single, after March, all his events to the end of the year canceled. Oof. So there's people in a lot worse shape than we are. We're lucky we're a small crew, I guess is the big thing.
And that's what I was going to say, look into the future a little bit. I mean, we talked about the high school graduations and the fair and different events that you've actually been able to come back and do. Do you have more on the horizon? Are some of those postponed events actually happening up until the end of this year?
Yeah, no. Most of them that said they were postponed have officially canceled. It was just too hard for them to, you can't continue on in limbo wondering what your state's going to do.
Right.
And how the crowd is going to react. I mean, you think about a lot of the events that we do, they're on sponsorships. Well, a lot of people are losing their livelihoods too and can't sponsor events. So, I mean, there is that as well. So most events have just said, hey, look, we're going to cancel this year. We're going to have we're going to come back bigger and better than ever in 2021. And we'll just see how long this thing lasts.
Yeah, that's kind of like a lot of people right now. A lot of things have gotten pushed back and everybody's just waiting, hoping 2021 can turn a corner.
There's one I'm kind of excited about. The snowcross event we do in the wintertime.
Yep.
They have shifted to, at least from what they've indicated to me so far, they've shifted everything to after the first of the year. And for me, it seems like a benefit because they get to have their big kickoff in Minneapolis over New Year's. Maybe.
Yeah. We'll see. Yep.
I mean, there again, it's an outdoor event. It's outside, in Minneapolis where they have their show. You can socially distance people out there. I mean, it's a huge Canterbury Downs.
Oh, yep.
So, but it all depends on what happens with everything. But they can start there, have a big kickoff there, and then we can actually have like a close tour of, that's what's nice about that snowcross thing. Everything's outside and it's cold.
I think it's cold. You got face masks on.
Yeah, everybody's socially distanced from everybody else anyway, because it's a big open area.
Yeah.
And they're completely covered.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So there's been some interesting snowcross events that, I mean, they can get down to -60. There's people still standing out there, but their whole face, you can't see anything but their eyeballs.
Yeah.
Because they're scarfed up and everything up. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. One thing that I want to stress to people too, is when live events does come back, please don't complain about ticket prices and stuff. Just be happy that there's some place for you to go and have fun. Yeah. I mean, I have heard so many people this year at events that we're having that the ticket price went up for like $5.
Oh, really?
And I can't believe the ticket prices went up. Well, I mean, you could just go home and not come. Do you want to do that? There are options. Just don't go.
Right. Concessions might cost a little more.
They are going to. Tickets are going to cost more for everything. Artists have been down for a year. There are going to be, and this isn't the time to be asking for price reductions with this stuff. Yeah. There's companies like mine that have not worked for 6 months that won't work until 2021. And there aren't a lot of companies that can last that kind of distance with zero income.
Yeah.
I mean, there are production companies shutting down. There are a lot of them shutting down because they just can't make it. Again, we're lucky we're a small crew, so we can kind of push through. If you have an event near you, go out and support it, even if it's something that you don't normally check out. I mean, there are a lot of rodeos that are happening, and I've heard from a lot of people this last year that have gone to a rodeo, we've never been to a rodeo. This is actually pretty fun.
They're just craving a live event.
They're craving something to go do.
Yep.
And again, it's outdoors. It can be spaced out. A lot of the outdoor events that we've done, we're doing a truck series this summer that luckily we picked up. They are spacing people out on the hillside. I mean, they're doing a great job. So I just hope people go back and start enjoying some events when everything gets
so
back.
If everybody feels comfortable going to live events right now with the being outside and some social distance, go and support those people and pay the ticket price and get some concessions, because everybody's going through some tough times right now. And I think we're all glad that sports are coming back, and hopefully all the major leagues seem to be working out. I mean, the NBA and the NHL, 0 positive tests so far in their bubbles. And Major League Baseball is pushing through. Hopefully we don't have a shutdown of the NFL too. So hopefully all that starts coming back, and hopefully sooner than later, these live events start picking back up again and people start going out and enjoying themselves again and feel safe doing so. Thanks for joining us, Nick, to tell us about what you've been doing for the live events, for graduations and fairs and rodeos. And hopefully your snowcross thing works out well too.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Daktronics Experience Podcast. Please subscribe at your favorite place to listen to podcasts to keep up with our latest episodes.